Oh boy, what a week. So the thing that I think you should know about me if you haven't figured it out already is that I apparently have no concept of time. So like when I say I'm going to do a video on Monday and then the next thing I know it's Friday, which is actually a lie because it's actually Sunday. Like where does time go? I don't even know. Anyways, I'm still in California at Quilt Passions. On a Sunday, have the classroom to myself, and so I'm getting some sewing done while the boys are just hanging out at the hotel, happy to not have me nagging them and asking them and begging them to go places. So I'm here doing some sewing. So I wanted to catch up on the reaching Sewalong, and I do not feel like editing videos today, so I'm gonna do this one long stretch, and hopefully it'll work out, but I just need to get it posted because like I said I'd do this on Monday. So first of all, thank you for your patience. It's been an interesting year for me. And I think what happened was I lost momentum on the reaching Sewalong. There were things, I could not drop. I had classes scheduled or I had retreats scheduled and I had no choice but to do those. Unfortunately, the thing that I did have a choice on was the reaching Sewalong, and so it dropped. I lost potential. Potential? What's the word I just said? The rolling down the hill. What's the word I just used? I lost, whatever. Anyways, we stopped moving forward. I stopped moving forward. We're off to a great start already, aren't we? Anyways, so the other thing is I didn't actually know if we got started on the Sewalong and I showed you some tips and tricks on dealing with the big pieces because we started with the big pieces. And then as we get down to the smaller pieces, I have some other things I'll show you today. But for me, I didn't know if you wanted to see just like sessions where I'm just sewing because, essentially once I got you started and we got those good tips off at the very beginning, I didn't know if you did just want to have a video of me just sewing the larger pieces. So let me know if that's something you would like to see. If you want me posting every single week and just showing what I'm sewing, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to. For me, I'm kind of like, oh, they don't want to see that. Do you? So if you want to see it even on weeks where I don't have like this tip to share, yeah, let me know. I'm happy to post. I'm happy to keep sewing with you. Momentum. There it is. You were saying it hours ago, I'm sure, but it just came back to me. So something I saw the other day was like, if you can't think of a word, you should say, what's that word in English? And then they'll think you're bilingual. Like, what's that word in English again? Anyways, so let me know if you still would just like a video with every session. Let me know, and I can make that happen. I can do that. I have the power. So this week, the goal is to show you some tips and tricks when it comes to those smaller pieces. We've been dealing with large pieces, and for me, I love them because you make really good progress and such fast progress. So I really enjoy this quilt because it goes together relatively quickly. So I am actually not working on reaching in California. I have the Knight, and I've been traveling with him. He's gone to Hawaii and Cleveland and now California, and I feel like I even took him to Michigan with me. I think he was in Michigan with me, so he's been places. We've had a lot of fun together. So I'm working on the Knight, and but the concept is the same, whether you're doing a foundation paper piecing that's not legit, whether you're doing reaching, whether you're doing legit, this concept works for any foundation paper piecing because the technique is the same across the board. So I'm going to show you some tips for dealing with the tiny little things because sometimes it's a beast, and these are sometimes the most frustrating part of it. So the first thing I want to talk about is like getting started. This is, let's see, so I have a piece of the Knight, and I'm going to get started as if I'm just going to work them like normal. So the first piece goes on the back of your pattern, and I just have to figure out where he fits here. Some people like to use a light box for this reason. You can really see where your piece is. A lot of times if I'm having trouble, I'll just hold it up to the light. Oops. And so I'm gonna do it with both of these because I I am working on 2 at the same time, so I might as well do it with both while I'm taking the fabric off the pattern so that I don't lose my fabric later. So number 1 gets pinned to the back of the pattern, always. And he's the only one that gets pinned directly to the paper. So number 1 gets pinned to the paper, and just make sure that all of your seam allowances are, there's fabric extending out past all of your seam allowances. And I think this looks pretty good here. I'm happy with that. I've got lots of fabric around all of my edges. Okay, so here's where it gets a little crazy, because we have these angles that sometimes do us in. And I'm going to show you a couple ways that you can ensure that your fabric placement is correct, so that when you do sew it, you don't have to sew it multiple times. You just sew it once and it worked and you were successful, and hooray. So actually number 2 is not the worst of angles, but I do want to talk about it real quick, because this is our sewing line between 1 and 2. And if you look here, the number 2 piece goes up slightly to the right, just a little bit, but it's enough. So let's talk about this first. When we're putting our fabric on here, so let's say we place our fabric on the back of our pattern and we've got it about 1/4 inch past that sewing line. Let me make sure I have it right. Okay. This is something you need to look for. If your pattern goes up into the right, your fabric has to do the exact opposite. This is a mirror image you're looking for. So if the top of your pattern is up here, the top of your fabric should be as high as the top of your pattern. So look for that first of all. This one's not such a bad one, like I said. Let's talk about number 3 down here, because this is a little bit more of a doozy. It's actually the same concept, because again, it's just kind of coming up into the right. So the concept is the same. The pattern comes up into the right, and so what do we need our fabric to do? The exact opposite. It needs to come up into the right. And at this point, so if I put my fabric here, you'll notice my fabric is not as high as the highest point of this pattern. So you can move this up a little bit. Okay, now that looks promising. I've got a nice mirror going here where the top of my fabric is as high as or higher than the top of my pattern. So at this point, if you get, you looked at your pattern, you looked for your mirror, and it looks promising, this looks like it could work. Before you do anything, there's a couple things you can do to really test yourself. So again, do these things. If you don't feel confident, or if you often have to re-sew or rip out, do these things to ensure that you get it placed correctly before you sew. The first thing you can do is pin directly on that line. Hold on, I'll show you. Put a pin on your sewing line. Pretend you've sewn it. And then when you flip your fabric on the pin, you'll be able to see. If I sew right there, that's gonna cover my fabric, cover my pattern. That's good. The other thing you can do is actually fold back your paper. So right on that line, and some people will take time to crease every single line on a pattern. That would drive me batty. But if you're the kind of person that needs to do that, by all means do it. If this is the concept that makes sense to you, by all means do it. Okay, so when you fold back your pattern, you're essentially doing the same thing. You're checking, whether you flip the fabric or flip the pattern, is the pattern piece going to be covered? And right here, it looks a little deceptive because I've got a lot of extra outside of the seam allowance, but if you actually look at that seam allowance, my fabric covers that pattern piece, so that's good placement there. You can also just plain use my folding creasing method. So let me see if I can do this backwards. So number 3 is what we're doing, and remember we talked about the mantra in one of the earlier videos where lower number left, higher number right. That's true no matter what technique you're doing. It is just important to be consistent with yourself. So when you are setting this up, when you're taking this to sew, put the lower number on the left and the higher number on the right. Now, this is our pattern piece here. I mean, he fits. We know he fits because I cut him for this piece. So he fits. He covers that pattern piece well. And so now what you can do is fold back right on that sewing line, give it a little crease, and then if you want to also, you can fold back right where the sewing line meets the seam allowance. And we have this like X marks the spot. This is what you're going to use to place your pattern. So I'm going to flip this directly to the right and put my pattern on that crease. So the sewing line will go right on that crease. And then you can still pin to ensure that it's going to work. So pin right on that sewing line, and now flip your fabric and double check. So whatever you need to do to ensure that you're placing your fabric correctly, it's fine. Do what you gotta do. I will say, I think the thing that I've learned recently in classes is, I know a lot of this is, it's backwards. It's strange to our brains. And I have found what happens is the student is trying to understand the concept. And so they're trying to do things and their brain is telling them, oh, you need to do it this way. And I'm standing above them saying, no, do it this way. And I have found that if you just follow the rules, so follow the law, not the principle behind the law, actually follow what I'm saying. Don't try and figure out why I'm saying it. Just do it. Eventually you will figure out why I'm saying it. Eventually you will figure out the principle. But if you're struggling to get your fabric placed, do not worry about why it works like that. Just follow the letter of the law, and eventually your brain will, it will do it naturally. It'll be a muscle memory for you. And two, later it can figure out the principle behind why we're doing this. But for now, you need that muscle memory more than anything. You need to just do it as a natural motion, and then later your brain will understand why you're doing it. But if you're struggling with odd angles, just do what I say and don't think about it. Don't overthink. Don't try and break it down or figure out why. Just do it. So lower number on the left, higher number on the right, and then place your fabric on top, crease it, flip it to the right, put it behind your pattern and sew it. Do not think about why we're doing that. Just get that motion down consistently, and that will really help you along the way. So I think that's all I wanted to say to you. I will say too, when we're joining our little pieces together in reaching, I do trim my larger pieces, like those giant pieces of water. I do trim those with a rotary cutter before I put them together. They're just so large and unwieldy that the pin and point method just isn't as effective with the large pieces. However, the smaller pieces you can still put together with the pin and point method. So if you have smaller pieces and you don't want to trim them before you put them together, you can use a pin and point method where you put, let's see if I can do it here. So let's pretend these go together. They don't, but let's pretend it. But I will put a pin in through here and out through its corresponding intersection. And then I'll do the same thing at the other end of that sewing line, and your pin should be straight up and down, and then put a pin on the sewing line to double check that everything's lined up. But when you put your pin on the sewing line, first of all, that pin needs to be straight up and down, so make sure it is. And second of all, don't move this pin to put the second pin in. This pin needs to stay up and down the whole time, so work around it, because if you move this pin to put this pin in, you've skewed your seam anyways. So try not to move that pin when you put this pin in. Okay, there we go. Now this one can come out. So whatever it takes, whatever you need to do to make it make sense to you, do it. We just want you to be successful and get it done. And I'm certainly not going to tell you to don't do it one way or don't do it another way, or you have to do it this way. This is the only way to do it. It's not. So don't let anybody tell you that. So let me know in the comments if you do want to see me just whatever I'm sewing Even if I don't have like a major tip or an inspiration or, you know, a mind-boggling thing to say, if you still want me to post, I'm happy to. Let me know. So I hope you're making good progress. We are actually getting well along in the Sewalong, and I love seeing the photos that I've seen so far. It's amazing. I love this quilt so much, and I cannot wait to finish mine. I will be going home on Tuesday, and then I think the drop-off for my state fair entry is like Friday. So I'm going to be working frantically to finish up a couple things, hopefully to enter into the state fair. I only enter my state fair because you get free fair tickets when you enter, and the comments that I get on my entry sometimes are questionable at best, and so I don't use it. Like I wish I could use it to improve, or I don't know. I get really weird comments like on color choices of the backing, and that's okay. But I do enter because of the free tickets, and maybe someday I will get the Best in Show rosette. Like that's really what I'm waiting for, is that rosette, but we'll see. So I don't think I'll finish my reaching in time for the state fair, but I have a couple legit quilts I'm entering. I have some crocheted items I'm entering. Oh, I think I'm gonna enter my quilt coat. I entered the frog quilt coat a couple years ago, and then I have a different quilt coat I might enter this year, so we'll see. I will be Nashville next month, and Grand Rapids next month, so I hope to see y'all there. See you later. Bye.